Welcome to all who have joined us so far for this update on the Retain Act. Some of you, I think, were with us when we talked about this before. JB has some updates on what's been going on. This is a big deal, obviously, for all of us in surveying and people in other GPS worlds. So we just want to make sure that everybody's up to speed, and JB can provide some help, I think, in terms of reaching out to your legislators and that kind of thing. So thanks for joining us today. We look forward to what JB's got to say. So with that, JB, I'm going to turn it over to you. I will turn my camera off so people don't have to look at me, and we'll be good to go.
Excellent. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, and thanks to Kurt and Trish for hosting this at NSPS headquarters. Good afternoon, everyone. This is John J.B. Bird, federal lobbyist for the National Society of Professional Surveyors, NSPS. And we're really happy that you've taken the time once again to join us either live today or you're watching this, since it'll be recorded and posted on the website, NSPS website, like the last version on the Senate one is. Number one, first of all, this again is an action alert. And we are asking for mobilization by the NSPS membership and leadership on the House version this time of the Retain Act, HR 4634. We've gone through previously the role that NSPS has taken up on Capitol Hill. As you'll see, a couple of these very familiar pictures that we highlighted last month, July 13th, on our previous training webinar. And so, yes, the NSPS presence is definitely on Capitol Hill. Your voice is being heard loud and clear. And thanks to many of you for reaching out already to the U.S. Senate, asking for co-sponsorship of the Senate bill S2166. But today's push is really now to turn our attention to the House bill. And the good news is that since we met and put together the training webinar last month, about 10 days later, we were happy to report that the House of Representatives, there's been a bipartisan bill introduced in the House. It is HR 4634. And over the next few minutes, we'll walk through again what the role is and has been from NSPS and what specifically is the ask in relation to having an opportunity for you all to actually go ahead and mobilize once again, but this time very targeted to your respective congressional delegations in respective states. So real quick again, my name's JB. I'm the Vice President, Miller Renwood Capital Strategies based in Fairfax, Virginia. It's been our honor and privilege of representing you before Congress as well as federal agencies for the better part of a decade now. So again, this may look somewhat familiar, but these are the active coalitions that NSPS has taken a role in, taken a part of. And as you can see at the very bottom then, various coalition letters NSPS has co-signed to make sure there's oversight over this issue of Legato, the former light squared, of interfering with GPS. And what actually brought this into play was the April 2020 ruling by the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, to approve the Legato application. And what that means for the bandwidth issue and the bleeding, the interference, if you will, that's very harmful and indeed interfering with the GPS that not only the surveying profession utilizes and leverages, but a wide variety of other stakeholders. So we've been able to tap into these networks of coalitions and work members of Congress, work House and Senate leadership, but also directly pursue advocacy to the actual federal agencies and specifically the FCC. And of course, we wanted to highlight the role of past President John Warren in activating our friends and other surveying, mapping, and geospatial organizations as part of COGO, and how we were able to take a group that sometimes doesn't get along on federal policy, and John Warren was very effective last year and continuing into this year in pushing and making sure that every organization in COGO could come together and leverage basically what we're trying to pursue and leverage all these additional voices in the surveying, mapping, and geospatial community behind the Retain Act. So let's move forward. These are the specific talking points that have been updated since last month. I'm happy to report that both Kurt and Trish have placed these updated talking points now on the NSPS webpage for Legato. So you'll be able to find this entire information that we're going to cover over the next few slides in an updated version of your talking points and bullet points. So again, we'll go from top down here. The entire issue popped up once again, most recently in April 2020. We just talked about the FCC approval of the application by Legato last year. And then to tackle this threat to GPS, just a few weeks ago, the Retain Act was introduced in a very bipartisan manner. 8 co-sponsors in the House, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans joined together to introduce the House companion of what we had previously discussed, which was S2166. Now we have a bill number in the House, HR 4634. So what this bipartisan legislation requires Legato to do is to cover the cost for correcting any interference from their operations when it creates for GPS users in the public or private sector. And specifically, why this is a big issue for the profession is that going back to last year in front of the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, the U.S. Department of Transportation provided a witness. And when the chairman of this committee, a very important committee that has jurisdiction over the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, during that hearing, the chair of the committee specifically asked all the witnesses, give me one example of negative consequences to the consumer when there's some version of interference with GPS and harmful levels of interference. Give me one example. And the only witness to step up and to provide an example was from the U.S. Department of Transportation, USDOT. And in that reply to the chairman's request and question, the USDOT official specifically said that the number one example they could come up with was high precision surveying, and a few sentences later, surveying equipment would definitely be real world examples of GPS interference. And what the engineers at USDOT, the engineers at the Department of Commerce, the engineers at the Department of Defense, they all agree there's going to be interference. And USDOT said specifically harmful interference. And so when we say, well, how does the surveying profession fit into this entire equation, and why there are over 100 different organizations that have endorsed the Retain Act thus far? And that's because we can now leverage 100 different organizations behind a rallying cry as to why USDOT put its neck out and specifically reference the surveying profession as being harmfully interfered with. So we can leverage all these other voices to sing our tune on this. And that's why it's very helpful for NSPS to work in these broad-based coalitions, making sure there's oversight of this issue and making opportunities and taking advantage of opportunities to advocate before federal agencies, but more specifically, in this case, to members of Congress. So our action alert here is, please go ahead and specifically reconnect, or if this is the first time that you're reaching out to members of Congress from your respective states, when you do contact your member of Congress, or if you have multiple members of Congress, you simply want to ask them, will you co-sponsor HR 4634? Remember, this is an action alert. This is the action we're requesting them to take. We are not asking for support. We are asking them to co-sponsor HR 4634. So that is the most direct ask that we would want you to walk away with today. So how do you do this? Well, there are a couple ways to do this. Number one, many of you will probably already have a copy of the Congressional Handbook that NSPS has provided earlier this Congress. And in that handbook, you can identify state delegations, who is in your state delegation. If you're from North Dakota, you only have one member of Congress, and that's a Congress, in this case, a congressman at large, just one district, the entire state. If you're from a state like California, I believe you have 53 House members, at least 52, maybe 53. I think you're losing one after the census. But you have to really take a deep dive and identify who your member of Congress is, especially if you have multiple members from your congressional delegation to choose from. If you do not have that NSPS handbook, please use this link we have here on this page. This will take you to the House website, where simply what you need to do is to type in your zip code. Now, the question for you is, if you think you have multiple members, meaning that perhaps where you reside is a different zip code than where you work and where your office is located, potentially you would have two different zip codes to add in and look up potentially two different members of Congress. But some of you may not have that issue. Your differing zip codes may indeed be the same member of Congress. But this is the website that you can specifically type in your zip code. If there are multiple members from a zip code, it will ask you to drill down and fill in specifically your mailing address, your physical address for your residence, or your office. And my suggestion is to reach out to as many members as possible. So you do have two different members, one that's your residential member of Congress and one that's a member of Congress from your office location. I would encourage you to reach out to both of those members. And it's two bites at the apple from my point of view. The three ways to contact your member of Congress or members of Congress. Number one is to call them. You can still identify the phone number for their Washington, D.C. office or their district office. My suggestion was to just call their 202 number, their Washington, D.C. location. That's typically where their policy staff, the legislative staff, are located. So call up their Washington, D.C. number and ask for the member of Congress if you get a hold of them. If you get a hold of the staffer, then ask the staffer, will the congressman or the congresswoman please co-sponsor HR 4634? The second way to do this is by email. You can take our talking points. If you chose not to call, but you simply want to use the talking points and place it into an email, that's another way to do it. And then the third option is to take your talking points, the bullet points, and then put them on your letterhead, sign the letter, PDF the letter, and then email that letter to the congressional office. If you already have a good contact, you have a business card from a staffer that you'd met with during a previous NSPS Day on the Hill, whether it was in person or most recently the last 2 years or last year virtually. Either way, if you have an email for a House member's staff, a legislative director, a legislative correspondent, a legislative counsel, a legislative assistant, a legislative aide, whatever the member staff that you met with, maybe even the scheduler, whoever it was that fielded your call, fielded your Zoom session, or fielded some other version of communication, that's who you would send the PDF letter to. And then when you email that PDF version of the letter, you also want to use the bullet points in the body of the email. So we talk about the hat trick from time to time, and there's nothing holding you back from completing the hat trick here. You can call, you can email, and then obviously if you do the PDF letter, you would put attach the PDF letter in the email. And that's our version of a hat trick, if you will, for mobilization on this kind of issue. So a quick summary, whether it's from the Senate bill S2166 or now with the House bill, HR 4634, NSPS has been very active on the GPS interference issue, and specifically caused by what was formerly known as Light Square, but now is Legato. We would ask you, as the walk away from today, is please contact your member or members of Congress and ask specifically, will you co-sponsor HR 4634? Whether it's over the phone or if it is indeed by email, if you receive confirmation from a staff member that you've reached out to in these congressional offices and they've given you the green light and a commitment that that member of Congress will co-sponsor HR 4634, please CC me, BCC me, just forward me that confirmation that you've received by email from the congressional staffer, or if you have, obviously, if you have a better connection with the member of Congress directly, you have an email directly from their personal email or from their business email, or sorry, office email, any kind of proof documenting that they have agreed to co-sponsor the bill, please forward that to me. We can share that with the bill sponsors in the House. We can go back even to Senator Inhofe and give him the great news that through his leadership of the Senate bill and through the subsequent introduction of HR 4634, that we've gotten traction. We've mobilized our members. Our members have directly interacted and activated at this request, and they've received confirmation from a member of Congress that they plan to or have already committed to co-sponsoring the bill. So with that, Kurt, maybe it's a good time to field some questions, if any have been submitted thus far. And I see a couple of hands have already been raised. I think Jim has, has a question. So, Kurt, do you know how to unmute Jim?
He should be unmuted right now.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me okay, JB?
I can.
Okay, my question is, are you going to send out a generic letter like you did with our senators, or do we put that together ourselves, or give me some guidance on that?
Yeah, so what I would do, Jim, you're a pro at this, right? So I saw that you had already sent the letters into your U.S. senators. So I saw that you basically took our our talking points, our bullet points, and turned that into your version of a personalized, tailored letter. You did a very good job of that. So I think that would be the best approach, is to update that letter, but using the specific talking points that we now have posted, thanks to Trish posting them on the NSPS website. It's the same location as where you can find the video from last month, as well as the Senate talking points. So my recommendation, Jim, is to do exactly what you did on the Senate version of the letters, but just change them around, update them with the specific talking points for the House bill.
Okay, one other thing I just want to make sure I understand correctly. Do you want me to send this letter just to my congressman, or to blanket it for all the congressmen in my state?
Here's what I'd recommend, Jim, is that the respect for you, I would just do just specifically your member of Congress, or if you have multiple members of Congress. But what the state society can do is to do a letter to every single House member in the congressional delegation from that respective state. They can do it one at a time, or they could list every single member of the state delegation and just do one letter to everyone in block, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great questions. Great questions. Thank you, Jim. Any additional questions, Kurt?
I'm not seeing any.
Well, let me just take a quick second to kind of let folks know the activity we saw from last month's webinar. And I did receive a lot of versions of the letters, the PDF letters, whether it's Jim's version and other members, NSPS leadership. NSPS, I saw that numerous state societies sent out action alerts, activating and mobilizing their respective affiliates of state societies and the memberships of the different states. So I saw a lot of positive mobilization efforts, and really happy to see that. I did see that there was one additional U.S. Senator added as a co-sponsor. That was from Georgia. A freshman senator, Senator Warnock from Georgia, was added to the Senate Bill S-2166. I believe he joined a week after the training session. So, again, we work in a lot of different coalitions, Kurt, connected specifically to this issue. So whether we can attribute that specifically to the Georgia Society or, some of the other groups we work with that are on our side of the coalition, this is a team effort. So every opportunity to interact with, in the last month it was senators, but this specific month we're pursuing House members. Every little bit helps. And to get these senators, in this case, the House members over the line as additional co-sponsors, it's a big deal. So again, this is a very important action item, and we really appreciate you all tuning in today.
Joanne Williamson asked about posting and sending the PowerPoint out.
Yes. So yes, Joanne, I think number one, I think we're going to have this recording posted on the website, just like the Senate version. And now you can actually see both the Senate talking points and the House talking points on the same web page, Joanne. And so yes, the PowerPoint recording will be available. I think we can also just, Kurt, if that's okay, we could just take the PowerPoint itself minus the recording and maybe send it out to Joanne and everyone else on the call today.
Yes.
So let me do that, Joanne. I'll take the PowerPoint PDF and send it to Kurt and Trish, and then they can circulate it to everyone that's on the session today, if that's all right. Excellent. Any other questions, Kurt?
I'm not seeing anything.
Kurt, do you want to just go back down memory lane real quick and talk about how you first got connected on this issue? Was it 2011?
Yeah, it's been a really long time ago, actually. When it first came out, of course, it was Light Square. And we got involved in it a couple of different ways, I guess. But we really started trying to take action with it. We weren't as well organized back then, JB, but we still had a lot of cooperation from people. And as time went on, it seemed like the players sort of changed as time went on. At one point, there were a lot of people in different industries, so to speak, that were really concerned. And then as time went on, they seemed to be less concerned. And I think that perhaps led to the approval that was provided against our wishes, of course, and many other people. But everybody sort of kept the faith, and seems to me that it made a really big difference when GPSIA came along. They seemed to coalesce a bunch of people. Maybe you might want to talk about that a little bit in terms of, at least from my perspective, it made a big difference.
Absolutely. And before I finish that thought, it looks like Jack Buddha has asked a question.
I'm trying to get back to where I can see questions again. For some reason, I'm not seeing them.
I think I see it. I think he's asking a question, looks like, about the Senate bill. So Jack, there was a Senate bill that was introduced in late June, and Kurt Sumner, and then John Pelletiello, the government affairs consultant for NSPS, the two of them participated at a press conference by Senator Jim Inhofe, a Republican from Oklahoma, who introduced the bill in a bipartisan manner with three other senators, 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. So it was a bipartisan bill, and that was done. It was S-2166. And if you check the NSPS website under advocacy and the special issues like legato, there's an entire recording that we did last month where Kurt and I prepped everyone on outreach on S2166, which is the Senate bill for the Retain Act. And there's a lot of good information. We have talking points about outreach to, in your case, to both senators from West Virginia. And yeah, so our ask was last month was to reach out to U.S. senators and have them co-sponsor S2166. Now that we're in August, we're shifting our attention over to the House version of the bill, and we're specifically asking for co-sponsorship of H.R. 4634. And then for Kurt, what you were just mentioning about the GPS Innovation Alliance, you're right. We were re-engaged by GIPSIA, I think 2 years ago, Kurt, and we are on top of that coalition. NSPS is listed as an affiliate member of GPS IA, and twice a month we participate on coalition calls by the leadership of GIPSIA. They include the affiliates like NSPS on the calls, and we trade information about what's happening in federal agencies on this issue, what's happening in Congress on this issue. But overall, I mean, they've been very helpful, specifically on the Legato light squirt issue, but they're much more than that. They're covering a lot of different other angles, if you will, to GPS. But yes, as a watchdog for the GPS interference issue, it's been a tremendously well-run coalition, Kurt, and we're very active in it. And they see value in us being a member as an affiliate, and we see a lot of value tag teaming when possible with GIPSIA.
I think for me, JB, another aspect of this is how, I guess for lack of a better term, how interested legislators are in working toward this. Of course, Senator Inhofe was sort of a leader in this, but it's like they get it now. At one point, we weren't so sure they got what our concerns were, but I think we're beginning to see more and more of them actually understand that.
Gotcha. Yep. And yeah, no doubt about it. And so when we have these kind of talking points, and we have over 100 different organizations making the same ask of their memberships, yeah, it's singing, multiple voices singing the same tune, and that's always way more effective approach. Working with federal agencies on this issue, specifically the FCC, and then when we do these micro-targeted activation and mobilization requests for members of Congress, it makes the messaging, number one, way more detailed, and we think even more responsive when members of Congress receive the same ask over and over and over. There's a better likelihood they'll actually listen and hear it and hopefully act on it.
Yeah, that really points out, I think, how important it is for us in the surveying community to make that outreach to our legislators, because the more different types of people who are impacted they hear from, the more likely they are to look at it as a big deal. And sometimes you're sort of the one voice in the wilderness, so to speak. But on this one, there seems to be a wider range. But it's really important that they hear from us as another entity or another group of people who are impacted.
Right. Exactly. And then I think, Kurt, there may have been one or two other questions that have popped up real quick. Jack did, from West Virginia, Jack did ask, is there still an opportunity to follow up with the Senate? And my suggestion is yes. We just wanted to simply make sure that we could communicate that there are two bills now. There's a Senate bill, and if you have not yet activated on the Senate bill, yes, by all means, please do. But the specific ask this time is definitely go after your House members, your congressional delegation. But there is still time to reach out to U.S. senators and make the same ask, but make sure you switch the bill number. You want to make sure the senators pursue S2166, and you make sure the House members pursue H.R. 4634. Ed O'Brien has asked, is the legislative language in the House bill identical to the Senate bill? The short answer, Ed, is yes, completely identical. So, yes, that's a great question, and simple answer, yes, they are. They are what we call true companion bills. They are identical bills. All right, any other questions? Kurt, can you see any other additional ones?
Nope, I'm not.
Okay, I guess we want to close it out?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I would apologize for being brief, but sometimes being brief is a great thing, so we don't take your whole day. But thanks for being with us, and looking forward to having you participate in our efforts.
Great, and just again, one last thank you to Trish and Kurt for putting this together, and for everyone participating today and taking time out of your valuable day to learn how to mobilize specifically on the House bill. This is an action item, and you've taken a great first step by being a part of this process, and we really do appreciate you taking the time today. So thanks again, Kurt and Trish.
Thanks, JB. Appreciate it.